Boast not of the morrow, for thou knowest not what the morrow will bring. Hence the custom of adding DV, Deus volente, God willing, to various things that are to happen in the future, for we know not what control we may have over the future. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. And we find that divine philosophy also in the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. Take no thought for the morrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. St Rita could not have known how her life would evolve. At a young age, she was already involved in an arranged marriage to an abusive husband. She stayed with it, suffered in silence, and actually obtained the grace of his eternal salvation, it would seem, for he had a change of heart before he died, murdered in a feud. And then, heroically, because it was the point of honor that the two sons of that marriage were to keep when they grew up, they were in danger of getting involved in bloodshed themselves. And she made this prayer, the Lord would take them rather than that they would fall into sin. And they, at a young age, died of disease. She wanted then to enter the monastery at Kasia. But there were problems, for the ongoing massive feud between the two factions in Umbria risked causing problems in the monastery, for there were nuns in there who would have been of the other faction. And so they wouldn't let her in. And eventually she had to be let in by divine intervention. She had a great devotion to the likes of St Augustine, St John the Baptist, Niccolo de Tolentino, and it would seem that miraculously she was brought into the enclosure, and they couldn't understand how she got there, but they took it as a sign that the Lord wanted her in. And so she was there for 40 years, quietly, obscurely serving and praying, and just doing good. Before she died, she wanted someone to go to the family property to get some roses, but it was impossible at that time of year. They thought she was mad. But somebody went, and lo and behold, these roses were there. And these roses are blessed every year now in memory of her, and they actually are known to do miracles. At this time of year, the famous miraculous bees go out of a niche in the monastery, go around, don't do any harm, and go back for the rest of the year into oblivion. This saint is a powerful saint, doesn't let down those who invoke her. Years ago at the Abbey, I wasn't happy that her feast was not being celebrated, so I celebrated a quiet votive Mass myself at the altar of the old Carolingian chapel. And I think there was one guest there present, but I remember that I was puzzled because during the whole of the celebration there was a strange, strong odour of heavenly roses. And afterwards I checked all over the chapel and there were no roses at all. Nothing. It was a little sign that the saint was content. And that saint, the saint of the impossible, has never let me down. We must not forget our heavenly friends. They don't forget us. She is a practical saint, and she obeyed, the famous way in which she was told to water this withered plant, and she did, and actually it came back to life. She was obedient, but also she put up with this bad marriage and sanctified herself in it rather than walking away. And she won over her husband. Years ago, there was this lady who was married to a doctor who was pretty anti-Catholic. This was in France. Eventually she died, and her husband found this note that she was making the sacrifice of her life, that is before she got ill at all, that her husband might have the grace of conversion. And he realized what had happened, and he was so touched that actually he did come to faith and prayer. One day, Fulton Sheen was on retreat when he was a young priest. It was given by a Dominican, and at the end of the retreat the Dominican came out with his story. The person in question had been his own wife. We can suffer for others, as indeed was taught by Our Blessed Lady at Fatima. She showed the pit of hell to these little children, indicating that it was the place where sinners went, but also that they could avoid that for them by interceding for them and making sacrifices for them. So rather than walking away, we can accept and offer and place ourselves on the cross with Jesus, that he may continue his passion in us. And in St Rita she had this invisible participation in the passion, the thorn, part of the stigmata.